My name is Alyssa Bermudez, and I'm here virtually to talk to you about Big Apple Diaries. Now, I'm an author, an illustrator, and an art teacher. I'm originally from New York City, but for the last 7 years, I've been living on the other side of the world in Australia. So I'm talking to you from the future, although technically it'll be the past because I'm recording this before you're here in person. Anyway, I've made art for as far back as I can remember, and I've also been interested in writing for as far back as I can remember. My first real interest in writing started as just a diary writer. I liked to write down all of the craziness that was in my head and just pour it into paper. So I wrote about all of the trials and tribulations of school, the worries that I had. I wrote about my crush, and just everything that really felt like a very big feeling that I needed to express. And writing is just the perfect way to do that. In addition to that, artwork has always been a part of my life, and I've always wanted to be an artist. My first, goal with art was to be a shoe designer. And so my first book was actually when I was in elementary school, and I made a book of all my shoe designs. So if you've read Big Apple Diaries, which we'll talk a bit more about soon, then you'll know that I loved shoes at the time. So Big Apple Diaries is a middle grade graphic novel based on my actual diaries from when I was in 7th and 8th grade. And so it's covering this really formative time period in my life because it was before and after the September 11th attacks in 2001. Something that surprises a lot of people when I tell them about this process and when I go to different schools and visit them, they're often surprised that all the writing for this book came first. So the writing had to be locked in. It had to be a great story, and that's the core of any book and any kind of writing. So whether it's a graphic novel or not, the writing is so important. So I started off with very simple drafts, and I didn't worry about the spelling or, the specific writing of anything yet, but just a draft that made sense in terms of where the story was going. What was going to happen first? What diary entries was I going to include in there? And how it would create kind of a story arc. So once that story arc felt a bit more solid, then I went back over that draft and kind of expanded a little bit further. I needed to figure out which parts of the story I would tell only in words, and then which parts of the story would be told with the visuals and the images. So for me, I used different colors because I typed this out, and that just made it easier for me. There isn't one right or wrong way to do a graphic novel, but for me, that made sense. So that everything that I wrote in black ink was going to be the words of the book, and then everything that I wrote in blue was going to be told in pictures. Once all of that was ready to go, I roughly laid out the text and created simple sketches to determine the layout of each page, the pacing and the timing. So, going from a document that's just random words to an actual book that's almost 300 pages, I had to figure out what text and image went on each page. And we want to make sure that at the end of each page, the reader really wants to find out what happens next. So I work with an editor and an art director, and sometimes it's really good to have someone else's eyes on your project because they can see things that maybe you didn't see. So I knew that after our edits back and forth, that it was going to be the best it could be. Once all of that feedback and back and forth is done, then it's fun time for me. Because all of the hard decisions are over, and all of that problem solving is over, the writing is over, the sketches are in place, and then I can just have the most fun making the final art. So what you're seeing here is actually a time lapse of me completing some of the final art after that sketch phase is over. And I don't want anyone to think that I work this quickly. So I work on a Cintiq monitor in Photoshop, and this is just many, many hours of working sped up into a couple of minutes. So there you have it, a little bit behind the scenes of making a graphic novel. I hope everyone enjoys the festival and has an awesome rest of your day.